For as long as I can remember, my family had one way of reminding me where I stood: silence. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that fills a room the moment you walk in. The kind that says you don't belong here without anyone having to say a word. My name is not important. What matters is what happened, and what happened after. I was 28 years old when my brother set me up to lose everything. My job, my reputation. The one thing I had built entirely on my own, with no help from anyone in that house. And when it was done, when I was standing at the door with nothing but my phone and the keys to a car I wasn't sure I could afford to keep, my stepmother smiled at me and said, "Let's see how long you last out there, sweetheart." 3 weeks later, she lost the house. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I had driven the 40 minutes home from the city because my dad asked me to. That alone should have told me something. My dad didn't ask. He summoned. A short text, no punctuation, the way he had always communicated with me. "Come home this weekend. Important." I pulled into the driveway on a Friday evening, gravel crunching under my tires, the porch light already on. The house looked the same as it always did: a wide colonial, on a quiet street in a quiet suburb, the kind of place that looked warm from the outside. I had stopped being fooled by that a long time ago. My stepmother was in the kitchen when I came through the door. She turned from the counter with that particular smile she reserved for me, pleasant enough to be polite, cold enough to make sure I knew it wasn't real. "You're late," she said. "Traffic on the 95. I set my bag down near the stairs. "Where's Dad?" "Study." She turned back to the counter. "Your brother's here too." My brother. 2 years older. My dad's son from his first marriage, same as me. But where I had spent my 20s building something from scratch, he had spent his coasting. Charm, confidence, and our father's blind spot had carried him further than they should have. I found my dad behind his desk, reading glasses pushed down his nose. He glanced up when I knocked. "Close the door," he said. I did. My brother was already there, sitting in the armchair in the corner like he owned it. He gave me a small nod, the kind that meant nothing. My dad folded his hands on the desk. "There's been a complaint at your office." I went still. "What kind of complaint?" "A serious one." He looked at me over his glasses. "Someone reported that confidential client files were accessed without authorization. Your login was used." The floor felt like it shifted. "That's not possible." "I haven't." "Your login," he repeated. I looked at my brother. Something in his expression, a stillness, that was just a fraction too careful, made my stomach drop. "I haven't touched those files," I said. "I've been on a different project for the last 6 weeks. I don't even have a reason to be in that system." My dad leaned back. "The IT report says otherwise." "Then the IT report is wrong. Or someone used my credentials without my knowledge." My brother made a sound, not quite a laugh, not quite a sigh, just enough to draw attention to himself. "She's always had a reason why nothing is ever her fault." I turned to look at him. "Stay out of this. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking." My dad raised a hand, and we both went quiet. He looked at me with the expression I had known my whole life, the one that said he had already made up his mind and was giving me the courtesy of speaking before he confirmed it. "I've already spoken to your firm," he said. My chest tightened. "You called my office." "I know the managing partner." I was trying to help. "You were trying to." I stopped, breathed. "What did you tell them?" "I told them you've been under a lot of stress. That you may have made a mistake in judgment." The room went very quiet. "I didn't do anything," I said. Each word was deliberate. "Careful." My dad sighed. "Regardless, they're opening a formal review. You're suspended pending the outcome." He took off his glasses and set them on the desk like that was the end of it. "You should stay here this weekend. We'll figure out next steps." I didn't stay for dinner. I went upstairs, sat on the edge of the guest bed. My old room had been converted into a home gym 2 years after I left, and I tried to think clearly. The complaint. My login. My dad calling, before I even knew there was a problem. And my brother's face, just a half second too composed. I pulled out my laptop and logged into my work account remotely. The access log showed my credentials used at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday 3 weeks ago. I had been asleep at 11:47 p.m. on that Tuesday. I knew because I had taken cold medicine and was out by 10. But someone had used my password. I thought about the last time I had been in this house. A month ago, for my dad's birthday dinner. I had stepped away from the table to take a work call and left my laptop open in the dining room. I closed my eyes. My brother had walked through that room 3 times during that dinner. I had thought nothing of it. The next morning, I came downstairs to find my stepmother and my brother at the kitchen table. They stopped talking when I walked in. Another thing, I had grown up knowing what a conversation looks like when it wasn't meant for you to hear. "Sleep well?" my stepmother asked. "I need to talk to my brother. Alone." She stood slowly, smoothing her hands over her robe, and left the room without a word. My brother watched me sit down across from him, his expression neutral. "You used my login," I said. He didn't flinch. "I don't know what you're talking about. 3 weeks ago. You accessed the client database from my account. I was in this house a month ago, and I left my laptop open." I leaned forward. "I want to know why." He looked at me for a long moment. Then he shrugged a small, unhurried movement that told me everything. He wasn't afraid of me. "You've always thought you were smarter than everyone else," he said. "All that effort, all that proving yourself." He picked up his coffee. "Dad's been wanting to bring me on as a partner in his firm. Having you connected to a misconduct case makes that conversation a lot easier." The cold that moved through me wasn't anger. Not yet. It was something more precise. "You did this for a job," I said. "I did this because it was easy." He took a sip. "Because no one in this house has ever really believed in you anyway, and they were already halfway there." I stood up. I walked out of the kitchen, up the stairs, packed my bag in 4 minutes, and came back down. My stepmother was in the hallway, arms crossed, watching me with an expression of mild satisfaction. "Running away?" she asked. "I'm not running anywhere." She tilted her head. "You have no job. You'll lose your license if this review doesn't go your way, and you have no one in your corner." She smiled. "Let's see how long you last out there, sweetheart." I looked at her for exactly 2 seconds. Then I picked up my bag and walked out the front door. I want to be honest about what came next. Because I've heard versions of this story where the person who gets wronged immediately becomes strong and certain and clear. That wasn't me. Not for the first few days. I drove back to my apartment in the city and sat in my car in the parking garage for 20 minutes before I could make myself go upstairs. I had a studio apartment, a car payment, student loans, and now no income. My savings could carry me for maybe 3 months if I was careful. My phone showed 2 missed calls from my firm's HR department and 1 from my dad. I called HR back. The review was already underway. I was suspended with pay for 2 weeks while they investigated. The managing partner, the one my dad had called, had flagged my file personally. It wasn't good. I didn't call my dad back. What I did instead was the only thing I knew how to do. I worked the problem. I started with the access log. I had already seen the timestamp 11:47 p.m. 3 weeks ago. I pulled up my phone's location data from that night. I had been home. My phone, my building's keycard entry log, all of it placed me at my apartment. I had not been at the office. I could not have physically accessed those files from a remote session without leaving a VPN trace, and there was none because whoever had done it had used an in-office terminal. My brother had a guest badge to my firm. My dad had arranged it the previous year when my brother was supposedly exploring a career change. He had been in the building. I documented everything. Quietly, methodically, I didn't call anyone or tell anyone what I was doing, because I had already learned what happened when I defended myself out loud. In that family, it became evidence of my instability. On the 4th day, I emailed my firm's IT security director directly, not through HR. I laid out the discrepancy between the access timestamp, my location data, and the in-office terminal log. I attached everything. I asked for a specific log pull on the guest badge activity from that day. Then I waited. On the 6th day, he called me. "The guest badge," he said, "used to access the building at 11:31 p.m., exited at 12:04 a.m. Whose badge?" A pause. "It was issued under the name of a guest sponsored by a senior partner." He stopped. "Your father." I closed my eyes. "I'm going to need you to come in," he said. I won't pretend the meeting at my firm was clean or comfortable. There were lawyers. There were a lot of careful words and a lot of phrases like, "We want to make sure we have a complete picture, and this doesn't necessarily mean." But by the end of 2 hours, The picture was complete. My brother had used a guest badge my dad had arranged for him, accessed an in-office terminal, logged in with my credentials, opened a set of files he had no business being near, and triggered an internal security flag that he had apparently expected to land squarely on me. What he had not accounted for was that the same security system that logged my credentials also logged the terminal location, the badge swipe, and a security camera timestamp that put him in the building at the exact moment of the access. The managing partner, the one my dad had called, was very quiet during the second half of that meeting. When it was done, my suspension was lifted. The misconduct flag was removed from my file. The managing partner personally apologized to me, which he clearly found uncomfortable, but did anyway. My brother was banned from the building. The guest badge program, I was told, was being reviewed. I drove home that evening and sat in my apartment and felt not triumphant, not satisfied, mostly just tired and very clear. I had not told my dad what was happening during any of this. He had called twice more. I had not answered. I knew why he was calling, and I needed to have every piece in place before I spoke to him. That night, he called a third time, and this time I picked up. "I've been trying to reach you," he said. "I know. The firm called me. A beat. They told me what happened. I waited. I didn't know," he said. And then, after a pause that told me more than the words, "I shouldn't have called them before I spoke to you." "No. You shouldn't have. Your brother. I know what my brother did. I documented all of it. I kept my voice even. What I need you to understand is that he did it in this house, using access that you arranged. And when I tried to tell you something was wrong, you looked at me the same way you always have." I stopped, took a breath. Like you were already sure it was my fault. The silence that followed was long. My dad was not a man who apologized easily, or often, or sometimes at all. "I should have listened to you," he finally said. "Yes. You should have. I want to fix this." "I know you do." I looked out my window at the city lights below. "I need some time." What happened next? I didn't plan, and I wasn't entirely prepared for. 3 days after my call with my dad, my stepmother called me. I almost didn't answer. But something curiosity, maybe, or just the particular perverseness of wanting to know what she would say made me pick up. Her voice was different, not the smooth, controlled register she used when she thought she had the advantage. Something tighter, more careful. "Your father and I are having some disagreements," she said. "About your brother." I said nothing. "He's very upset about what happened. He feels responsible." She paused. "I think he's overreacting. What your brother did was wrong, but it was a mistake. A lapse in judgment. He accessed confidential client files using stolen credentials to get me fired," I said. "That's not a lapse in judgment. That's a crime." "Well," she cleared her throat. "Regardless, I think your father is considering taking steps that would be harmful to the family." Something clicked. "What kind of steps?" "He's been speaking with a financial advisor about restructuring some assets." Another pause, just long enough to be deliberate. "Assets that currently include your brother and me on a joint account." There it was. My stepmother was not calling me to make peace. She was calling me because she was afraid. "I'm not going to tell my dad what to do with his money," I said. "Cassandra, I'm going to say this once." I kept my voice steady. "You stood in that hallway and told me to see how long I'd last. You watched your son do what he did and said nothing. Whatever is happening now, between you and my dad, that's between you and my dad." I paused. "I hope it's fair." I hung up. It was my cousin who told me the rest, a few weeks later. She had always been the one person in that extended family who called things what they were. My dad had gone to an attorney the same week I spoke with him. Not a divorce attorney, not at first. He had started with the financial accounts, the ones my stepmother and my brother had both been drawing from. He found things that had been obscured for years. My stepmother had been gradually moving money into a separate account she had set up in her name only. Small amounts, regular intervals, the kind of pattern that looks like nothing until you look at 5 years of it together. My brother, it turned out, had known. He had been helping running transfers through a shell account he had set up as a supposed freelance business. What my brother had done to me at my firm was, in my dad's words when he told me later, the thing that finally made him look. Because when my dad called the managing partner, intending, I think, to protect himself by getting ahead of whatever I might say the managing partner had, instead, asked my dad to explain the guest badge. And my dad, for the first time, had been forced to look directly at what his son had done with the access my dad had given him. It was the wrong move for the wrong reason that cracked everything open. My dad filed for divorce 8 weeks after that Friday night. My stepmother contested it. The financial records, which her own paper trail had created, did not help her case. My brother hired an attorney, but the conversations with my firm's legal team made that complicated quickly. By the time it was done, and it took months, the kind of months that make you realize how long systems take to catch up to the truth, my stepmother left the house with considerably less than she had expected. My brother spent 4 months in a legal process that ended with a settlement that he will be paying back for a long time. I want to tell you there was a moment where I felt vindicated in a clean, satisfying way, where I looked at the wreckage and thought, good. Mostly, what I felt was something quieter. My dad called me on a Sunday afternoon, a few weeks after the final court date. We talked for almost an hour longer than we had talked in years. He told me things about his marriage that I hadn't known, about the years he had spent choosing convenience over clarity, and what that had cost. I know I failed you, he said at one point. He wasn't a man who said things like that. I had to sit with it for a second before I could respond. I know you did, I said. I'm not ready to be past it yet. But I'm not done either. I'm still here. He was quiet for a moment. That's more than I deserve. Probably, I said. And then, because it was true, and because I was tired of pretending things were simpler than they were, but you're still my dad. My brother and I have not spoken since. I don't know if we ever will. There is a version of this story where I find some grace for him, some understanding of the fear and the resentment that must have built up over years of watching our dad give me credit he never gave him. I can understand that, in the abstract. But understanding something is not the same as forgiving it, and forgiveness, real forgiveness, not the performed kind, is something I am not willing to rush. My stepmother sent me a text once, months later. 2 sentences. I read it twice, then deleted it. What I know now is this. I spent years in that house trying to prove myself to people who had already decided what I was. Working harder, achieving more, staying in rooms I should have left years ago, because some part of me still believed that if I did enough, they would finally see me differently. They didn't. They couldn't. And that was never about me. The job I almost lost, I kept. I was promoted 6 months later. The managing partner, to his credit, made sure my name was fully cleared within the firm and has never treated me as anything other than what I am. My apartment is quiet. My car is paid off. My savings are back where they should be. Some mornings, I drive past exits that would take me toward that suburb, that street, that colonial house with the porch light on, and I feel something that isn't quite grief and isn't quite relief. I think it's just the truth of a thing, sitting where it belongs. I didn't set out to take anything from them. I just stopped handing them pieces of myself and hoping they would build something careful with them. That was enough. As it turned out, that was more than enough. If you've sat in rooms where the silence says, you don't belong, stay. Not for them. For what comes after. Because what comes after is yours. And it is better than anything they ever could have given you.